Okay, let's go ahead and start the TST, and David's going to walk us through the proposals that we have, collaboration proposals.
And what I will do, instead of sharing the screen, I'll drop the link. I believe I've shared with the Cord Tst this planning, the partner collaborator planning doc before, so you may already have the link, but I just dropped it in the chat as well. Oh wait, here, I can show my screen now.
Yep,
Okay.
thanks.
So I don't know if you're seeing it. Are you seeing the spreadsheet?
Yep.
Okay, so this is where I'm keeping track of the proposals that are coming in, and you can see that there's a few pieces of information here on 5, 6, and line 5, 6, and 7. You know who the organization is, you know who the initial point, who our contact points are there, and then over here on status on line H when they submitted them. So I think that's going to be an issue at least for Expo when we get to that. But let's just go through in order. So just this week we received 2 proposals, Aerosent and one from OAI, the Open Air Interface. I mean, the proposals, I mean, I don't know if there's a standard process where we want to invite people, every single person who proposes to this meeting, or only if there are questions after reviewing the proposal. So my kind of working assumption is I send the proposals, and if there's questions, then we'll schedule something. So I haven't scheduled anything with Arison or OAI yet.
So let's go ahead and make that the default. And it's not just if we had questions, if we were also really excited and wanted to,
Okay.
talk about it. But
So just by default, schedule them. All right.
no. By default, let's first talk about them and then decide to schedule them.
Okay. So
Which is
the way we've been doing it.
Which is the way we've been doing it.
Gotcha. Okay. Great. So do people have any questions, comments about the Aerosent proposal, or is that something we want to have a discussion with them about?
I was hoping that we would invite them to come talk a bit about that proposal.
Okay, that one is the plan, and we're hoping to get them scheduled for next week. So
okay, we do. So I'll reach out to them today. So see if they can do that next Tuesday. Okay. So no other comment, I guess, for now on them. What about the one from OAI? I think there's been multiple conversations already happening with them. I don't know if scheduling a meeting with them would be fruitful or not. My understanding is Ping Ping and Tom Tofig are already talking with them pretty regularly. I think Ping Ping even referenced on the mailing list thread that she would be talking with them and making a recommendation for us. Do we want to schedule with them or defer to Ping Ping and Tom?
Is Ping Ping on?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here, and before they send out the proposal, so we will continue that process and let you know the result.
Could we just a second, Ping Ping? Could we get you closer to the mic and B, everyone else muting, because we're getting a lot of garbage on the line. Thanks.
Hi, Larry. Before they send out the proposal, we already discussed several times. So we will continue that thread and let you know the result. And if we need help, we will talk again on the Cord email list.
Okay, so if I heard correctly, you will just continue the conversation with them, and if it proves fruitful, help them refine and submit a proposal. Okay, sounds good.
Yes.
So I won't do anything with them for now. We're waiting. No action for me on that one.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, great. So then the last one is a group that we already have had talk to us. Here, come back here.
David,
Sorry, what?
You're showing a file full of passwords when you don't show the.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. Yeah, sorry. I forgot I was here on my screen. Went over to make my notes about not needing to do anything with the OAI one. So Expo, we've already had them attend, so I don't think we need to reschedule with them necessarily. I think we do need to give them some sort of response. They've been, it's been close to 2 months now since they've spoken with us, or sent the proposal. Do we have a response for them?
I'm afraid this one is swapped
We,
out for me.
we still haven't discussed how we deal with third-party VNFs. The issue with Expo is that they have cool VNFs, but they're all not open source, and it's weird for us to make accommodations for inside an open source project for someone who's not going to contribute their VNFs in open source. So I think the latest deal that we had with them was that we would ask them to provide engineering resources and do the work and contribute it and not rely on us at all. Whether that makes them a collaborator or not is I don't really know. But I think that was the ultimate deal that we reached, that they would provide all the engineering resources and build whatever they want to build.
How do we want to interact with them to help them understand that issue? David, can you relay that, or?
Actually, I think to David, I had sent a 4-point sort of plan for folks like Expo. David, do you remember that, where we were saying that, okay, you don't necessarily need to build a part yourself to integrate it. You can work with one of our partners, for example, to find, and you spend engineering resources to integrate your DNF into the platform.
Yeah, I remember we came up with language that I did send to them. So from your point of view, the ball's in their court. We just need to wait to hear. This is basically no more action from us until we hear back from them about those points.
Yeah, well, did you hear back from them about those points?
No.
Okay.
I can follow up with them, but no, I did not hear back.
Can you bring up the mail and maybe send it along in the Cord Tst mailing list? Just so I thought that was our plan in principle to integrate folks who are, say, not necessarily open source or don't want to build their own pod.
Yes, yeah, I do remember sending them the language. I guess I was a little confused because it did sound like to Ali's point, there was also some questions on our end that still remained unanswered, though. So didn't know how those complemented each other. But yeah, I will dig up that thread with them, ping them again, and then forward that to the TST list.
And does the TST want to actually come up with a plan? Because I assume this kind of situation is going to happen over and over again, where people want to do stuff or collaborate with us with proprietary features. Do we want to have a discussion about how we deal with that and have a kind of a common policy or process?
Yeah, I think that we should. The other example we've had like that's Akamai. Now, because of other circumstances, people closer to Cord had already worked with their VNF, but that was not officially as part of any ON lab, or for that matter, technically any part of what Cord developers have done. So the general notion was that if somebody, and the onus is likely on the ONF owner, wants to do the integration work and then make their VNF available through some licensing agreement as a part of a release. And by the way, I think it would be the case that the VNF itself would remain proprietary, but any integration pieces, the data model and synchronizers and all of that, would be open sourced, and that would by definition expose some of their APIs, I guess. So if they're willing to do that, then I think it's perfectly fine that we list them, and there is a service inventory page, and in the column there's a column that says you got to go get an evaluation license from the following company if you want to take this one for a spin. Something like that, I think, is the default thing that we're doing.
Yeah, I also think that we kind of need to figure out, because it's not clear to me that these kind of people would be willing to open up their data model or their API. And I don't know, either we say you have to and potentially lose them, or we kind of have to figure out with one or two of them what the right model is and try and come up with a consistent one across everyone. I'm a bit worried that getting them to abide by our rules might not work. But I don't know. I could be wrong.
Well, okay, so that says that there could be two classes. There could be those that, and I don't know what we do for the people that won't even show us an API for the VNF that we could integrate into Cord. I don't feel any obligation to advertise that they have VNFs. If they want to take the step that there is a bit of blue code that is open, then I'm willing to include, A, release that as an official part of the release, and B, include documents that point you at who you need to talk to actually get the image to run, or the app, or whatever it is. I think we need a couple trials, test cases to.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that in the Akamai case, they weren't necessarily eager to have every Tom, Dick, and Harry that downloaded a code come bug them for evaluation. Of course, they're only interested in licensing eventually to operators. So there will be, I don't know, considerations on each one of these. It could be fairly special cased. I don't know.
I'm just forwarding an email. I found the thread that I was just referring to. I forwarded that email to the Cord Tst mailing list. And if you scroll down, there's this 4-point sort of plan. In the last, I think I asked David to say that it's okay to put it on the wiki, but really the TST should decide if it's okay to put it on the on our wiki in terms of sort of collaborator guidelines.
If I remember correctly, we talked about we'll just have that language and send out when appropriate, but it wasn't applicable to every collaborator proposal.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, again, thank you for forwarding that. If you've already done that, I won't need to, but I will follow up with Expo to see if they have a response to those points.
Actually, I forwarded it. Now I can't actually see those 4 points in there.
I can.
You can?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the 4. Find a Cord partner. Can you go back? Find a Cord partner with a built pod into which Expo product can be integrated. Work with the community to identify a showcase as a use case. Spend engineering resources, their own effort to integrate into the partner's pod. Show it and encourage community to use it. And this can apply to anyone who has an open source or a closed source VNF. It doesn't quite apply to, say, people like Mellanox who want to offer alternatives to the stuff that we use in the pod. But for someone who's just trying to bring in a VNF into a pod, I don't see why it shouldn't apply.
Why don't we start with that, and I can put up a wiki, basically. I get or some point where we lay out our, I guess you could call it a subcase of projects, or a subcase of collaborators, more likely, that have VNFs, and there are the following possibilities. These are the criteria. This is what we'll do. Just kind of lay that out as a bit of a policy, and throw it up on the wiki.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
And because there are a range, you might make it available for a showcase, and that would be very valuable, but you wouldn't necessarily make it available for anyone to come download. That's actually kind of consistent with what Akamai was after. That's probably would be fairly common. Okay, all right, so the action item here is starting with Saurav's email. If you want to, I guess you've sent the link out now. I will throw up a wiki and point the TST at it, and we can edit it until it sounds right.
Right, and I'll follow up with Arison and Expo, and then let you know about when and if they can meet next Tuesday.
Great, thanks.
If not, we'll find another time.
All right.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm going to drop off.
All right, thanks.
Happy holidays, everyone.
So I know we have and I don't know if this is going to be a full-blown discussion or it'll be very, very quick, the ONUS version that we're going to depend on. So let me interject one other somewhat scheduling thing, which is 2 weeks from today, which is December, no, I'm sorry, 3 weeks from today, which is December 13th. I would like to turn this into a 2-hour TST meeting, 10 to 12 Pacific time, where we, and maybe we don't need that much time, but to block it out, and then we do as much release planning as we can. We've been circulating a document. We need to open, I think we need to open up edit access so that each feature that's listed on the first page, you can come in and the appropriate people can come in and fill in the details on the detailed page. But I would like to spend time talking about that and schedule that before we break, with the intent that we have at least a pretty solid, if not completed plan for when we hit the ground, so we can hit the ground running the 1st of January. Comments? Is that? I know we haven't gotten the current release quite out the door, but I think it will be baked enough that we can start. It'll be time to really sharpen what we're going to do going ahead. All right. ONOS release. I guess this is largely centers around a discussion between Ali and Saurabh, so I'll let one of you run with it.
Sorry, run with what?
I thought there was a discussion needed to happen about whether we were going to officially depend on ONOS 1.8.
Yeah, well, I argued in favor of it because there's a fair number of changes, not just to the app, but to the core, to the drivers, to the providers, that were necessary in our move to OFTP at 3.0 EA0. And I don't like backporting so many changes into a version of 1.7. And I really don't understand the issue, the argument against using 1.8 either. So that's my stance. I think Mark had said that he agrees with me. I think Charles had said that he agrees with me. So what's Ali's take on that?
It's a question of we peg Cord to an ONOS version. We can't just rev the ONOS version because we feel like it. There are other people depending on this. So it's either you play by the same rules as everybody else and you make your changes on ONOS 1.7, or we had to say from the very beginning that we're going to rev this on master and run the master branch of Cord against the master branch of Cord of ONOS, sorry. And that makes things very complicated for us because we then rely on snapshots which expire and break the build every 2 or 3 days. So we need to figure this out and have a clear way forward. And my suggestion going forward is that we always rely on the release version of ONOS and not the master branch.
So I think, Ali, could I translate that we've already got water under the bridge? It's okay to do the 1.8 because the pain was what happened in the past, but that we, as you say, be a little more disciplined about being on a official release going forward.
Yeah. So I guess this time we can make an exception, but it's not a good precedent to set.
Is it just 1.8 releasing this month?
Yeah, it's going to be released in time, but that's the issue is more what happened up to this point in terms of having dependencies in an unstable branch, I think, as I interpret it. or not unstable, but master instead of released. All right, so exception this time, but as part of release planning, I guess we will discuss dependencies, and certainly it's ONOS, but it's also other systems that we depend on, like OpenStack and so on.
I think the point is that just because we're all working in ON Lab and ONOS is an ON Lab project, we can't assume some sort of special relationship. We have to play by the rules just like everybody else would play by those rules, and versioning is a very important part of that. If we just do whatever we want, then it's going to lead to confusion and mayhem.
So, Saurav, are you okay with that principle? I mean, or do you think that we would really be giving up something valuable if we locked in the release we were going to work on for the ONOS release for a given Cord release?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, okay, if you're going to do Cord planning for the next release, then we can say that, yes, we'll always use this for the next release, right?
Yeah, that would be the idea.
That's okay. In some ways, I still don't understand for this release, if it's coming a month after the 1.8 release of ONOS, what's the issue?
The point is that, again, if we did this if we plan for a certain release, then we need to stick to it. You see what I mean?
Well, let me give you, Saurabh, let me give you another example. Suppose half of the developers were planning on OpenStack Kilo, and the other half were depending on OpenStack something else. It would not be. You would not end up in a good situation.
Okay, so we never planned for it, so that's fine. We'll plan for it going forward.
Yeah, I think that's the key takeaway.
I mean, yeah, I guess we never explicitly stated it. It was there. We'd always said that we always going to rely on the release bit of ONOS at the time of the beginning of a release cycle.
Okay, thanks. I think that sounds settled. Are there any other topics?
So one question. So if you're gonna decide to stick to the snapshot version after the next Cord release, we really effectively cannot do anything to the trace part of the pieces, because I don't think next ONOS is not going to come out for another 3 months or so. Is that?
Well, you can't do anything that depends on a new feature of ONOS. Hopefully, there's plenty to do. I'm assuming there's plenty to do on Trellis that could be done with the current version. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think another problem is that right now the ONOS release cycle is just too long for other projects like Cord, which refers to or depend on it. So I mean, yes, I kind of agree on both Saurav and Ali's point, but I think we also have to make a shorter release period for ONOS, such that we can both have a stable version to test, and we can also continuously deliver new features, because right now we have shorter release period of ONOS. I think that's probably I don't know, the other solution for.
But are these features? So there's two problems there. Is that the Fabric release cycle is tied to ONOS release cycle. If you were to pull the Fabric out of ONOS, that would at least give you some independence. Sure, there's still some platform things that ONOS introduces that you might need to fix and change, but the hope is that these are relatively rare and can be addressed through either bug fixes in a given release version. But I would highly suggest that we separate out the Fabric from the ONOS code base to give yourself more independence.
No, it's not true. What you're saying is just not true. You can't pull just the application out and be fine with it and hope that nothing else in ONOS changes. Because every time I get a new bug fix from Broadcom or something, a new feature that requires something that's not in the driver today or not in the provider or not in OpenFlow extensions in ONOS, I can't just say I'm going to use the 3-month-old release of ONOS and still build this new feature that I need for XYZ. It just doesn't work that way. There's so much that changes.
So what is it changes? I mean, so if everything changes, just because the new way to talk to a VPA has changed a little bit, and everything has to change, then I'd argue that there's something wrong with the design of the entire thing. I mean, it's either you guard yourself against these things in such a way that you can pull out the application and make changes to the app and make changes to the driver separately. Also, the driver can be pulled out as well. The driver can be loaded as well, just like in the other application. So I don't see what the problem is.
You want to pull out OpenFlow also?
Why didn't you change? Why didn't you?
Let me give you an example. Just to implement pseudo wires, we had to change Loxy. Okay, we have to change the OpenFlow provider to build in extensions to OpenFlow that are not covered in OpenFlow but needed by OFTPA to support the pseudo wire feature. You want to pull everything out of ONOS then?
Well,
No,
is it the case?
I would argue that that's a relatively seldom change, and yeah, it'll happen, but it doesn't make an argument that okay, what is your suggestion? What do you suggest? You just use the latest master branch of ONOS all the time? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, I'm just saying not depend on a version of ONOS that is 3 or 4 months old.
Well, how else are you going to do that? I mean,
Shorter ONOS release cycles is what Charles is proposing, and there are other people who agree with that.
Okay, I mean, sure, let's make shorter release cycles for ONOS. Can we say the same thing about other dependencies that we have? We don't have control over all the dependencies that we have. So we can't just go around saying, oh, we'll just do that to ONOS. But what about another package, another dependency we have? We don't have control over it. So you have to guard yourself against the dependencies that you have. And I agree that sometimes it's not going to be easy, it's not going to be convenient, but that's the way it is, right?
So this is a little ignorant.
Can I make a generic?
This is ignorant on my part, but why isn't it the case that you're using a stable version of ONOS, but you then replace the app or a southbound plugin? Isn't it possible and completely part of the model that you would modify for your purposes a particular release of ONOS, but that's not part of the official release?
Lost the chain of thought.
Are you suggesting Cord project to host a fork of ONOS?
I don't
No.
know enough about how ONOS is managed, but I don't understand why that's a fork. I'm thinking of ONOS as more pliable, I guess, than maybe it is.
So this is Jot. So listening to two great minds like Saurav and Ollie getting into an argument that caught my ears, because normally that doesn't happen. So I don't know if maybe I don't understand the issue, but before I ask perhaps and beg Ollie's and Saurav's pardon to explain this one more time, I would like to state in general, I mean, hundreds and thousands of open source projects depend on each other. I fully agree with Ollie that projects should be largely independent and have their own cadence in terms of progressing. But it is inevitable, as Saurav pointed out, that time to time you have a version dependency from one open source project to a dependency open source project, because a feature that you need in your project depends on a feature that just has been introduced very recently in your dependency. And that's just the way of the open source land. The way we define those is we make greater than equal type of version dependency declarations in our project. That has been that way ever since open source was, or well, version management was, to that matter, discovered. So maybe I'm missing the issue. What is what we're discussing here?
We're discussing if the next release of ONOS should Cord should use ONOS 1.8 or an older version, which is, I don't know, 4 months old.
Well, wait a minute. We've already agreed that it's okay that we're doing it this time. This is basically trying to understand the policy and approach going forward.
And what's wrong? If I assume that the reason people argue for 1.8 is because there are some features in 1.8 that are needed for a healthy operation for some of the features of Cord. And if that's the case, then that just follows the normal pattern. Why is that? I mean, if we go forward, and the extrapolation of that rule is that if the next release of Cord comes, if that solution that is being tested and certified by the Cord community relies on an ONOS feature that has been introduced even more recently than 1.8, then that dependency number must be bumped. If not, then there is no need to bump it. Do we need to make this any more complicated than that?
Zolt, this is the complication that I heard, which is you're absolutely right in everything you said, but there are multiple, and maybe I'm completely missing the point. I heard that there are multiple dependencies on ONOS, and if one aspect of Cord is using version X and another aspect of Cord is using version X+1, that complicates life going forward. We haven't agreed on a single. Maybe the issue is we need to agree on a single.
One detail that is very important for this. Sorry for, I guess I interrupted.
No, that's all I had.
Okay, so obviously there is an important assumptions in this version bump is that there are minor versions and major versions, and minor versions bump when there is backward compatibility. So if a portion, if I understand this correctly, let's say a portion of Cord projects rely on a feature that exists in a 1.7. If ONOS goes to 1.8, if everybody plays with the semantic versioning rules, then that means that 1.8 has everything that 1.7 had, so nobody's going to be broken who relied on 1.7, but those people who rely on features that came in 1.8 can also be happy. So the same version serves both communities, and the only time when something is broken in terms of backward compatibility is when there is major version changes, and that is a much bigger issue. But I assume we are talking about the minor version change. So is that the problem, that somehow people relying on 1.7 are going to be screwed because 1.8 no longer honors the APIs or features that 1.7 had?
Yes, well, so there's another problem here that ONOS doesn't currently implement semantic versioning. So what you get in 1.8 may very well have different APIs than what you would have had in 1.7. The other issue here I would add is that the features that were added into ONOS here were added by the Cord community, by the Cord developers themselves, into the master batch, which was slated to become 1.8 in whatever it is in a month now. Right? So 1.8 doesn't even exist yet, and we're already talking about switching the release of Cord, this current release in January, to 1.8. You see what I'm saying? Is that like it's confusing for people, and I understand why it happened this time. And all I'm saying is, going forward, we should try. And I understand that there are situations where we will not be able to do that, but we should always strive to work on a released version of ONOS, bumping the minor number as we move along, because we're doing bug fixes or whatever, and then release Cord against that released version of ONOS. And then we start the process again for the next release and move on.
So, something that would soften the blow of that is not every story that we work on during this release will be included in the release. There's always been an element of laying groundwork for something that is in the future, and those elements are always free to work on some advanced version of some upstream software if that's appropriate. But that's not shouldn't be affecting what's in master and influencing anyone else.
I agree with Ollie that it is healthy and advantageous if there is a gap between when a dependency becomes a new stable release is available for a dependency, and versus when the dependent reaches a release, but that doesn't happen all the time. At the minimum, what has to be guaranteed is that when a certain version of Cord gets out, then the version of ONOS that relies on it gets out at least a day earlier. What I mean is that obviously the dependency should always be a release dependency. But sometimes it's inevitable that projects go in such a sort of short lockstep that healthy gap between when a dependency is stable versus when a dependent is stable is just not there. I think that's inevitable in open source land.
I mean, you're right. It will happen. The hope is that these kind of events are rare.
Yes.
They don't happen frequently. If they happen frequently, then I would highly suggest that we build a mechanism inside Cord or inside ONOS to guard ourselves from these kind of things.
But I don't know. I mean, if you look at new versions of large projects, like consider Ubuntu or consider the KDE environment or the NOMI environment, it is common that new UI comes out just shortly after or in sort of the same round when a fundamental underlying library gets a new version because the UI depends on that new version of that library. So in closer communities, it is quite common that these things are a little bit phased together, sort of synchronized. But I think the crucial point is that semantic versioning and the fact that backward compatibility is kept. If one thing can kill an open source project on the long run, it's that. What I mean is
I agree. I agree, and I think that I would say that. Well, if you look at Ubuntu, the versioning of Ubuntu and the package versions that it relies on are very much several versions behind. Like the packages that you install off app are kind of late in the game, right? They're kind of this is why we have app repos that are from other sources, like the PPAs lying around, so you can get the latest version of a package for a version of Ubuntu that doesn't support that, hasn't been tested in that package.
I fully agree with you, and I think your point is well taken that as things mature, and I would certainly consider Ubuntu to be obviously the very mature end of the scale, whereas Cord and ONOS may not be quite there yet. As things mature, that gap has to be there just for stability purposes. You cannot really rely on the cutting edge of dependencies. The question is, I think we all agree that that's where we have to get. The question is, how soon or what's the road.
Yeah. So like I was saying, we this time we can make the release of Cord against 1.8, but going forward we rely on release bits of ONOS and release bits of any project for that matter. And if we don't do that, then if there's a good reason why we need to rev to the next version of open source project where the code hasn't necessarily been released, then we really need to pass this kind of decisions through the TSP and make sure that we need to do that.
I think we agree.
Is that okay? Is that okay?
I think we agree, and I mean, for me, this is something that needs vetting as best we can when we do release planning, which we haven't ever done before. Anything else to say on the topic? Any other topics? Okay, thanks everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.